for Generational Kinetics, we study generations. That's what we do. We look at the trends that shape them, their key characteristics, and we want to take this research, this data, translate it for you so that you can work across the generations with greater ease and less stress. How do we do that? Well, first let's start by defining what we mean by generation. Here's the next thing I need from you. I know there's a lot of wisdom in this room. You guys are the best of the best. That's how you got to this position here today. So I want to use some of that wisdom. I want you to imagine that someone from my generation, we're going to call them Gen Y for now, someone from my generation is coming to work for you. It's our very first job. We might be 27. We're excited, we're nervous, we're late. What advice, if you could give us just one piece of advice, what advice would you give us? It has to last us the rest of our career, all right? And keep in mind that the advice that you give probably reflects the values of your own generation. Raise your hand, boomers. Yeah, I'm seeing some watches. That's a dead giveaway. It's an iPhone watch. Good. So, boomers. Boomers, you have so many skills my generation doesn't have. You read maps that don't talk to you. You know state capitals. And when it comes to work, boomers measure work ethic in hours per week. And if they can't see you, you're not working. Doesn't matter if you're lesson planning or grading from home, they can't see you, it doesn't count. Now, boomers, they believe in policy, protocols, procedures. You must use a fax cover sheet. What is a fax? Boomers, they like to get to work so early to save their assigned parking spot. It's not really reserved, but it is, right? So boomers are still the most influential generation in the workforce today. A lot of you are in here because of that. Still holding a lot of the leadership roles, have influential relationships, but we are starting to see that change. They are beginning to retire, particularly the oldest segment of this population, this generation, and we see Gen X moving up, and millennials are fast behind them. Can we see that my generation still has a lot to learn, right? That's not being rude or prejudiced. That's merely a function of where we're at in our life and career stage. Just like we all agree that you had come a long way since that very first job, right? Okay, here, I'm going to share a piece of information, some of our research from the Center for Generational Kinetics that might help demystify some of our behavior. On average, what we found is that on average, my generation is starting in their very first job 1, 2, 3, 4, even up to 5 years later in life than previous generations statistically started their first job. And this delay, it is causing so much friction and frustration, right? Because when you see a 23-year-old, you're not necessarily thinking of somebody who's never had a job before and is still living in his parents' basement. No, you're thinking of where you were at when you were 23. And for some of you in here, when you were 23, you were married already. You had 2 kids, a dog, and a house without a cosigner. Seems impossible to my generation. Listen, I get it. When we show up for you in that first job, you are counting on us. We should get there early, stay late, and wash your car. But instead, each one of you in here has a story about a millennial that has done something at work you wouldn't believe a person would do. It goes a little something like this. It's 2 in the afternoon, you are in the busiest season of your hiring year, and you look up to ask your Gen Y employee a question, and she's nowhere to be found. Actually, she's in the bathroom, on her cell phone, taking a selfie. And you're thinking, are these kids ever going to grow up? Well, I've got some good news and some bad news for you. We have been studying generations for 10 years now. And we can tell you definitively that some of the behaviors that drive you crazy, like how we look at our phone when we're talking to you, well, they're not going away. It's not a phase that you can wait out. You've got to do something about this. But those behaviors, the ones that drive you crazy, they're the result of different life experiences. Different experiences than the ones that you've had that have shaped your understanding of what is normal. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong, we just have a different understanding of the norm. How you were parented and raised affects how you view money, spending, debt. What do you think of as a good job? Do you get somewhere early, stay late? How do you communicate with somebody? Do you look them in the eye, give them a firm handshake? All of this, learned behavior, and usually from our parents. So here's where it gets fun. What generation raised millennials? Guesses? Baby boomers, right. Okay, so I want to see who my baby boomers are in here. If you were born between 1946 and 1964 in North America, raise your hand. Great, keep those hands raised. I want you to make me a promise. Don't put them down. Promise me you will never retire. I'm not kidding. You have so many skills my generation knows nothing about. My favorite, long division. It's like magic with a pencil. Boomers. When you turned 18, your mom and your dad sat down with you at the table because they were married. And they said, "Happy birthday, son. We love you. We are so proud of you. And you have a bright future ahead of you. But you're 18 now, so you're gonna need to go to college, join the military, get married. We don't care. Get out." And you wanted to leave, didn't you? And you knew you couldn't come back. I mean, they gave you luggage. So boomers, you entered the workforce with an ultimatum. You knew you had to become self-reliant. And you quickly discovered that the key to self-reliance and job success was to outwork the competition. And you still do it to this day. You get there early, you stay late, you work on weekends, and you tell us about it on Monday. It freaks us out. We're thinking, can you get a life already? And can I get $10? And then you have my generation. When we turn 18, our mom and our dad and our other mom sit down with us at the table and they say, "Happy birthday, son. We are so proud of you. We love you. You have a bright future ahead of you. And you're 18 now. So as long as you go to college, we'll help you out." Yes. So we go to college for 7 years. And by the time we've taken every class there is to take, the university kicks us out with a degree in general studies. And where did the majority of us go upon graduation? Home, right. Because of this parenting philosophy. I'm going to start it. If you know where I'm going with it, finish it with me. We wanted it to be easier for our children than it was for us. Mission accomplished. Let's move forward another generation. This one's for Gen X. How many of you remember coming home and sitting down in front of a desktop computer and you heard this? "You've got mail." Yeah. Only it was after 10 minutes of excruciatingly slow dial-up connection, right? Okay, one more generation forward. So I live in Philadelphia, but I was born and raised in Texas, so all of my family is still there. My sister and her family live there. And the other day, my sister texts me and says, Avery wants to talk to you. That's my 4-year-old niece. How do you think Avery called me? FaceTime, right. So Avery, she is never going to remember a time before you could see the person on the phone that you were talking to. In her mind, that is how phones have always worked. She can't see you, the phone's broken, right? How many of you remember the cartoon where you could see the person on the phone that you were talking to? What was it? Jetsons, right. She's gonna think the Jetsons is about the past. Finish this phrase for me. Millennials are tech. Don't write that down. It's actually a misperception. And it's based on an observation. What do you see us doing? Staring down at a screen, texting, tweeting, walking into walls. But that doesn't actually tell you that we are tech savvy. Sure, some of us are. But what that shows you is that we are tech. Let's say you have just had a really, really important conversation with somebody of a different age. And you leave this conversation and you get that sinking feeling. They had no idea what you were talking about. So what are you gonna do? Well, I know what you do if you're a baby boomer. You get out your pen and you write us a note in cursive. We don't even read cursive anymore. So what do? We get out our phone and we send you a text message with so many abbreviations and emoticons, you would need a glossary to decipher it. I get it. These differences are challenging, but the good news is that we can leverage these differences and use them as strengths and learn from each other. I'm going to give you one more snapshot of our youngest generation because we're starting to get a lot of questions about the generation that comes after millennials. So we are calling this generation Gen Z or iGen, like iPhone. And there's some really fascinating findings that we're discovering in our newest research. So I'm going to give you 2 of those. So this is the generation that the oldest group is about to finish college. They're 21. So it's 21 and younger. And their perspective when it comes to entering the workforce is very different than millennials. Okay, so you've got those strategies. That's 3. 4, millennials need ongoing feedback. This is the feedback generation. We're pretty aware of that at this point. 42% of millennials expect feedback every week. That's twice as much as any other generation. Now, this doesn't need to be an hour-long sit-down session. And if the only time that millennials get feedback is at their annual performance evaluation, we're going to need to change the title to Exit Interview.